Okay, aloha everyone. It is me again, Ku'uahoa, with our final episode. We brought on two new guests today. But first off, I want to say thank you to Pacifica by Design and to the California State Library to providing this grant so we can talk about these topics and bring up issues around hate and more specifically in the Pacific Islander community and get our voices heard. So, you know me, Ka'ua, I'm from Kauai, I'm native Hawaiian, and we took a little break because I actually just graduated from college. Yeah, and we can have our next guests introduce themselves.
Aloha kako. I'm Momi. I'm from Kauai. I am Hawaiian and yes sir.
Aloha, my name is Kamali Ihomeathronis. I'm from Wailua on the island of Kauai, and I am a senior at West Oahu.
Aloha, my name is Michael Eva Kiamoai Koka. I'm from the island of Oahu. I am Native Hawaiian as well as Tongan, Samoan, and Fijian.
Aloha, my name is Moani. I am from Kekaha, Kauai. I am a current, just graduated college from Creighton University Nursing School.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So I guess we'll just dive straight into things today. And I already asked Kamali and Momi these questions, so I guess we'll hear some of Mwani's and Michael Leva's perspectives and then go off of there. But the first question that we started with is, what is hate to you, and how do you view it, and what does it mean when you hear the word hate?
To me, I think hate it could be shown both like physically and I guess mentally as well. It could also be like a prejudice. Even if you don't really think about it, like you may have like underlying hate towards things that you don't really even realize. So hate could be, I guess, seen in many different ways. But it's, I guess, I'm not sure what a deeper meaning than hate. I was gonna say hatred towards something, but I'm not sure if you want to add on to that.
I agree with Michael Leva. I think, especially now, hate can be shown on social media a lot more. Like, I feel like every video that you come across on social media, especially just like I just came across a video of like a podcast and like a Hawaiian podcast, and there's like a lot of like negative comments, like because someone may not agree with someone's stance or the way that someone is, so they'll kind of show hate in like the negative comments.
Thank you. I don't know if Momi or Kamali, you want to say anything of what you said last time, but I know we talked about like different ways we perceive hate. We talked about social media a little bit. How there's hate, but then also like possibly using it for good and education. Um, you guys want to say anything, or should we go on to the next question? Okay. So the next question, right now, the beginning is kind of reintroducing us to like the topic of stop the hate and getting Moani and Michael Leva's perspective. So, how do you react when you see hate directed to yourself or to others, especially like people in your community?
Well, like personally for myself, when I feel like I am being, I guess, hated by another individual, it depends on the circumstances. If I notice that it's because of, like, I guess, prejudices that they might have, then it doesn't really affect me in any way as long as it's not really verbal. But once it becomes, I guess, verbal or physical, I've never actually experienced like physical hate towards myself being like Pacific Islander, but I guess in a verbal way, it would be more like people saying like, "Oh, can you like dance hula for us?" Like, or can you sing me like a Hawaiian song, like stuff like that. Like, I guess that could be seen as hate towards us, or not. I don't know. Sorry.
I don't mean to cut you guys off, but this is something we talked about actually, like microaggressions, and I view that as hate. I think me and Kamali and Momi talked about that. Like, that's a form of hate, and of Michaeleva, that is hate to you, like a form of hate. And I don't know if anyone else wants to share their experiences or Moani of like similar things, but like you might not perceive it as hate at the time, but later on you reflect on it and you're like, oh wait, that actually, was something. And even if it's small, like it still leaves an impact.
Yeah, for me, I think like I went to college in Nebraska. So it's like the Midwest, and everyone there is like, oh, like you come from Hawaii, like you're like the 50th state. And I was always like, no, like we're not a state, like we're illegally overthrown. And so I guess the way that I deal with hate is I kind of get like snappy and I kind of just like yell back. But yeah, going to school in Nebraska for 4 years, that's like all that I dealt with. It was just like, oh, you guys are like a part of the United States. And I was like, no, like, especially during when we'd hold our annual luau, we're very, like, we push, like, Hawaii is like not America. That's what like our Hawaii club tried to push at least.
Thank you. Well, going off of that, I think since we all talked about hate, if Momi and Kamali want to jump in on this one and also share your perspective to Michaeleva and Mwani, but what are ways do you think people can show allyship, even since the last time we talked? What are, some different ways or things you've heard or seen or done yourselves that, this is someone actually trying to work better and work towards themselves, even if it's like you saw something about a tourist visiting Hawaii, but maybe they tried to go to the Lo'i or something, you know, not only making their trip about going to Waikiki and staying there the whole time. So I guess what ways do you view allyship or ways people can work towards being a positive impact?
Wait, sorry. Before we move forward, could I ask, when you say hate, you also mean like disrespect?
Yeah. So like we talked about, hate encompasses whatever it means to you, but for us, we feel microaggressions fall into hate. Disrespect, like that can fall into hate depending on how it's coming across. If like sometimes people say like Hawaiians are lazy, like that's a form of hate. And then there's like self-hate and hate within the culture, like some Hawaiians hating on others for being too Kanaka or not Kanaka enough. There's all these different forms of hate. It's just what your how you view it in terms of these topics.
Because kind of going off of that, where you're talking about like, um, there is like kind of hate in our own community of like being Kanaka, like, oh, like he's like too Kanaka, or like, oh, he's not Kanaka enough, or he might not speak well, or stuff like that. Like, there's definitely hate within our communities, not just in Hawaii though, but I feel like there's also a little bit of hate just in like Polynesia in a whole. Like, I feel like we always kind of compare ourselves to the different Polynesian cultures, and like, oh, we might not be Polynesian enough because look at like New Zealand, for example, like their literacy rate might be like higher in terms of them speaking Maori. So like we may feel like if we compare ourselves, that could also be, I guess, considered hate, like comparing between us.
Anyone else want to share on that or further that topic? No? Okay. I mean, well, going back to like that other question, how do you view allyship, or what do you think people can do to be a better ally to Pacific Islanders?
Well, definitely, I think we should find like the similarities between our cultures and kind of move from there. Especially if we're trying to build allyship, I think the easiest way to do that would be, as I mentioned before, like our Polynesian brothers and sisters of other nations. I feel like if we were able to build stronger connections with those countries, um, that would definitely be a good start.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, just showing up and trying, I think, is the biggest thing. Like, I've seen videos out there of people of all kinds of nations trying to learn hula and trying to learn Olelo Hawaii. Whether the ways they're learning it through is the proper channels, at least they're trying to do it. They're trying to take that step to learn. I think it's just a topic of giving them better education or easier access to those things rather than following someone off of a TikTok and copying that dance that they might have just made up, then going to like they should actually find a real site of someone who is a kumu that shares hulas for other people to these other cultures just to keep the culture alive and get the word out. So I don't know how you all feel on that kind of topic.
Oh well, I think it's a little hard to really know how we could send out people. You know, like how you're mentioning, like to spread the word, because I feel like even in Hawaii itself, like not everybody is aware of like the things that like we're dealing with, and as well as I feel like we don't really have like a set platform yet. I guess in a way of like what it means to be Hawaiian and um, like how to act as a Hawaiian. So if we send people out, I guess to teach them about Hawaii, it could become misconstrued because they might not have the same values as other Hawaiians. So it's kind of confusing in that way, but I feel like probably working within our communities first and figuring out what it means to be Hawaiian and strengthen our lahui. We can build the numbers then to send out people to build more allies amongst other nations.
I agree that we should like work within communities first because then you can like make it known this is the way of our kupuna and this is how you cannot misconstrue our culture and things like that. But I just feel like it's gonna take a long time. So like if we start now and like obviously there's not all Kanaka don't think the same. But if we were to like say don't go to Dole Cannery, that's not who you support. Go to so and so, right? That's like one small step towards teaching tourists and foreigners like our culture in a way because one step a small step forward is a big step whatever that saying is, right? And then yes, we can still work in our communities. I do agree though that there are some Kanakas that do not think the same, and I'm not going to bring up anybody, but as long as we work within our communities and then we make it all clear like this is how we should move forward as a Lahui, then I think we can help our culture, what is it, like thrive. There we go, thrive. What do you think, Kamali'i?
I think you guys made some good points there, and that part of stopping the hate is not pitting ourselves against each other and putting ourselves on a scale of who's more Kanaka or who practices this and this better, but that we all each have our own kind of value system and how we show that we're Kanaka, like we mentioned the last podcast. And I think that part of that hate, like you guys mentioned before, was ignorance. And I think that educating is a good way to get more allies and practice strengthening that connection that we have with other Pacific Islanders and other nations.
Thank you all for your views on that. That was like a really good section on Stop the Hate and what we view as hate, and kind of just reintroducing the topic to ourselves and to Moani and Michaeleva. And I know we talked about some things in the last podcast that we wanted to bring up. But before we do, I wanted to take a moment and have us all talk about our backgrounds, because I noticed when we all logged on today, we all had Aina as our backgrounds and different places. And I think it's important to mention the connection that people have, especially Pacific Islanders, to land and all that. And so first of all, I want to go off with mine. It shows Napoli Coast, and this is more on the northern side, because like I come from Hanalei, I come from the North Shore of Kauai, and seeing Napoli Coast is really special. And being able to share that with people, whoever may be watching and listening in. If you take a look real quick at your screen of our backgrounds, it's an important place, and it holds a lot of significance in culture and to me of just growing up around these mountains and these places. So I don't know who wants to go next and talk about theirs, but yeah. Maybe Kamali'i, since ours are similar.
So mine is also in the Moku of Napali, and this is up in Koke'e. It's one of the ridges at a lookout up there. To be honest, I had this background from the last podcast we did, so it automatically went on. But this ridge is the northwest side of Kauai. And the only way to see it is if you go up Koke'e, or if you go hiking around. And yeah, I have family from both north and west, so it's kind of like the connecting point. Even though there's no like road to get from the west back to the north, you have to go all the way around. But yeah, it's a really special place. It's a really beautiful place to be.
Okay, I'll go next. So my background, this is Hule'ia River and Alekoko Fish Pond, as well as Haupu. And this is in the Ahupua of Niumalu, in the Moku of, I'll get back to you on that, on the island of Kauai. Yeah, so in the past year, this has become my, Moku of Puna, sorry. Yeah, it has become my personal vahipana because I was working here for a long time. And if you know the history of Ale Koko or Ala Koko, you know that this fish pond produces so many pounds of food, and it can revive our lahui, can feed our lahui, and bring, aquaponics back to modern day. There's many mo'olelo about Hule'ia River that I'm not going to get into. But yeah, this has become my vahipana. The last podcast, I put Kalalau as well, but I want it to be different this time. So this is my second favorite spot on earth. So yeah.
Our background is Hanakapiai. So, like Kamali'i said, where her Napali Coast is kind of what connects the west side of Kauai to the north side of Kauai. Hanakapiai is just on the other side. So Kamali'i's background is on, like, if you were to go up Koke'e and then like on the west side, ours is from like kind of looking like this way at Napali Coast from the North Shore.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing. And going off of that, I think maybe we dive into the topic of like Hawaiian's connection to the land and like Pacific Islander connection to the land. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything on that. I know we talked about some of the issues we faced, and why it's an important topic. I mean, I think each island has their own pushes that they've been fighting for to protect the land or the Aina, Mauna Kea on Hawaii, the water on Maui, the salt beds on Kauai, the water Red Hill on Oahu. So Molokai versus like the ranch. I think each island, Ko'olave, the bombing, like you can keep going and you can keep going and finding all these issues. So I don't know if there's something you all want to talk about and why we view it as important or the importance of it. And maybe if anyone wants to share like the history of why we feel that way and the connection we have. So that was me hinting at one of you guys to tell like a little bit of the story. But yeah, whoever wants to take the stage next.
To kind of jump into it, I think that as Pacific Islanders, we have an Aina-based or land-based center, whereas other nations such as the US of A has like a more human-centered mindset in it, where they perpetuate values and ideas that are more geared towards themselves, and it's more selfish in a way. Whereas Pacific Islanders, we view Aina as our sibling, or we have kind of a parental relationship with it, parent and child relationship, so that we view Aina at the center of everything. And kind of nurturing that relationship is what we hold very important.
I agree with that. An example of that just popped into my head is like the story of Haloa and the relationship that we have to Kalo, and also the relationship we have to our Akua from our culture. If you guys don't know about the story, I'll just briefly go over it. So Papa and Makia, Sky and Mother Earth, or Mother, whatever, okay, they came together and they had a child, and the child was stillborn. So then they decided to plant it in the easternmost corner of their hale, and from that sprouted the kalo plant. So then that signifies the first kalo, and therefore our first relative. Then they given birth to another baby, and that turned out to be the first kanaka, and therefore our first older brother. Or yeah, and then that kind of explains our relationship to Aina and also plants as well. We see it as a source of nutrients, energy, all of the above, and in that way we reciprocate that malamaing, and we malama it back, if that makes sense. That was just one molalo I could think of out of the many. Yeah.
Going off of Momilani, also, like, I think in Hawaii, like Hawaiians, we always think about Heli'i Ka'aina He Koa Ke Kanaka, like the land is the chief, and we as just the Kanaka, we are its servants. And so I think with that in mind, like you always hear like leave somewhere nicer, like cleaner than like the way that you like found it. So what we are like always malamaing the Aina. We are always we're just always like looking out for the Aina. If there's a color, we'll pick it up. If there's like a day that we can like give back, then we will do that.
And also going on to Aina, what perfect way to put this one, because La Ho'iho'i is coming up, and with that, our that's where we got our nation's motto, Ua Mau Ke'e o Kaina I Kapono. So, yeah. So just going off of that, I mean, perfect timing because we're literally going to celebrate it this weekend, and speaking of the Aina, like the sovereignty of the land and all those type of things. Our model, our nation's model, we had Aina in it. It wasn't just about the people. We placed importance on the Aina because without the Aina, we as the stewards wouldn't be able to live on these lands.
Very nicely put, Michael. And I just want to note that we're filming this on July 28th and Lahuiho'i is July 31st. Lahuiho'i is on July 31st. So this will probably come out after that, but just to know that this is coming out around a significant moment in Hawaiian history. And the first time that we kind of got taken over and reestablished and given our rights back as Kanaka. But yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to talk about that. Okay, then we'll kind of shift into our next topic here, and something we talked about last time that I wanted to bring back up. And that's the portrayal of natives in the media or Hollywood industry. And we just talked about Aina being important and the land. And in one of the most recent movie examples that we can think of being the new Avatar, where they portray these whales and people with Hawaiian, like not Hawaiian, but like Pacific Islander looking tattoos and marks, and then also living off the land, fishing. They had something that looked similar to like Lau Lau they were making. So yeah, what do you all feel about the portrayal of natives in the media or Hollywood?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't make that comparison to Avatar and natives just because, like, watching the movie, there's a stark difference between what it looks like to be like, I guess a human, and Avatar is like it's obviously an alien. So I don't know. I can't find a connection between those two.
Aliens are real.
If you'd like to further, I'm kind of confused with that one. Sorry.
Well, did you watch the movie?
No,
I didn't.
watch
But I know what
Avatar.
Avatar is.
Okay. No, well,
Watch
in the
it.
movie, okay, we can look it up after, but in the movie there's like a part where these like huge whales come out and they have like Pacifica designs on them, like tattoo and like markings. And then like it talked about the importance of the people, like the Avatar people, having the connection to the whales, and like they go and honey each other like nose to nose, and like they embrace each other, which kind of I draw the reflection of where in Kumulipo in Hawaiian culture, like everything on land has a tie to something in the water. So that's why I bring that connection, and the importance of that. But yes, you should see it. You should see it, and then we can talk about that. But I don't know if since our last time, Kamali saw it. No, you did. Kamali and Momi, you didn't watch it after. Okay, we're just gonna watch that part. Like it's not a long part, and we're all gonna go watch that. But okay, skipping past Avatar, how else do we feel about Native Pacific Islanders in the media? Not even just in like movies and things, but on social media and other ways. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that there's definitely like a right way to portray Pacific Islanders and their cultures in media. And one way or one example of that is how the creators of the movie Moana did it. And just to say something before I start talking about Moana is not about only Samoa or only Hawaii. It is about all of the Pacific cultures. And yeah, they use Samoan songs, or they are using Tongan songs. Like I really don't know what language it is in, but it's not about one specific culture, and they really did go from culture to culture, country to country, like kingdom to kingdom, to really like find the culture like the specific culture and showcase all of them. And the way that they did that is they went and they found the original waymakers. They found the original tapa makers. Like they went in and they did their research. They did their homework and they came out with Moana and they portrayed the Pacific Islanders and their cultures beautifully. You know, some people might think, oh, this is cultural appropriation. But if they really took the time to see that from the creator's point of view, they actually went and researched the cultures, then you will see, oh, this is cultural appreciation and not appropriation. And I think that's a great example. None of that Hollywood coconut bra grass skirt or cellophane skirt that we used to see like in the 50s. I just took a class about that and I was so infuriated. I don't even want to get into it. But yeah, Moana's a great way to get into that, like to portray cultures.
I think Native representation in the media, a lot of it, like you can get cultural consultants or people to help you kind of make the movie how it should be portrayed if they want to go the correct route. But it's also like the people who are making these movies, like big names like Disney, for example, or just other directors who aren't native, like who's getting all the money that these movies are making, that they're profiting off of cultures. I see like portraying cultures in the right light and you get all this information correct and you portray it well and appropriate and you have that cultural appreciation, but it also comes down to actually being a part of like they're profiting off of the cultures is what I think is wrong with it.
Okay, to go off of that, I don't know if you guys know the movie. I know Kamali'i knows, but the movie The Wind and the Reckoning, about the story of Kalalau, the profit from that movie and the reason why the profits from that movie went towards I think it went to charter schools and immersion schools because the movie was all in Olelo, Hawaii. Like that is a great example of how your profit should go towards, like in one perspective or like one way it went towards teaching Olelo Hawaii or normalizing Olelo Hawaii in theaters, and then now its proceeds are going towards immersion schools and charter schools. Like that is a great example. I just had to bring it up.
Right. And then we look at that example and we ask people if they know what The Wind and the Reckoning is, and
Right.
nobody's heard of it.
Nobody knows.
In mainstream media and
Right.
big Hollywood movies as it should be. They're kind of like this smaller, like passion projects that don't get the amount of funding that it should be getting, that don't get the screen time that it should be getting, and the audiences that it should be reaching. So I think that if these big names want to perpetuate cultures and support nations like Pacific Islanders, then they should be having natives not behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, directing, producing,
Right.
all these proceeds,
Doing all the roles.
good like charter schools or perpetuating the language and the culture. I think that they could do better still.
Going off of what Kamali'i just said, actually, like just 2 days ago, I watched this movie put out by Coconut TV, which is I think more of like a Samoan-based media company, but they put out a movie called Inky Pinky Ponky, and I assume you guys haven't watched it, but it's actually like pretty good for being an independent. Like it's similar to Wind and the Reckoning, in the sense that it was like created by the people for the people. It's like about the struggles of a transgender like Tongan girl who moved to New Zealand, and like it just embraces like Tongan culture, Samoan culture, and Maori culture, and kind of like puts those in the forefront of the movie. But it's Islanders creating and putting Islanders in front of the camera, which like Kamali was just talking about that, so I had to put it out there. I don't know if you guys have anything else on that. I know Momi was unmuted for a second.
Nah, yeah, I love that movie, and I think what made a lot of people know about it is probably because it's on social media, and social media is a great way to, advertise music, movies, shows, all that kinds of stuff. I just wish we saw a lot more Kanaka based or Pacific Islander based films on social media than be like, oh, what is that? What's the hashtag? And then you end up watching the movie, and then proceeds and views go towards, we could see a lot more of that. Is all I have to say.
And I mean, also going off of that, like the social media aspect, I think we saw one of the biggest showings of how Pacific Islanders coming together through social media can put other Pacific Islanders on top through Iam Tongi on American Idol. I mean, I think that's an important thing to note now when we talk about like media. I think without social media, like he grew so much and was pushed to the front and eventually got to win the whole show with the backing of Pacifica people. I mean, what I was in California at the time. I went to Safeway and this someone auntie, because we were talking, she was the cashier and she's like, I gave her my ID, and she's like, "Oh, you're from Hawaii?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." And she's like, "Oh, you know Iam?" And I was like, "Oh, like, yeah, I watch American Idol." She's like, "Yeah, he's so good. Like, I think he's gonna win." And this was still in the beginning. And it was just so cool to, make that connection and see that Pacific Islanders all around the world were, rooting for him and got to know him because of social media and Hollywood and everything like that. So I don't know. What are your views on that aspect? I know Mwani and Michaelova actually watched him. So I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we were able to go out to Turtle Bay and watch his concert that he just had on the 1st of July. And it was so cool because we were just driving around the North Shore earlier in the day, and there were just a ton of people. And we even like met up with some friends at the concert, and yeah, you could tell that Ian was a little nervous, but like everyone that was there, like all of Hawaii that was there, just like supported him. Like he kind of made mistakes, but we're like everyone was just like cheering him on. It's like so great to. It was so great to see like just everyone having his back. Like he really won that thing, and I feel like he really made um when he even talked about the priced out of Hawaii on American Idol, that was even more like brought more light to the situation, which is a topic that is very important in Hawaii too.
Right.
I mean,
Off of
sorry,
that,
Nicole, go.
Mwani mentioned like when he won, like I think we took pride in that as well. Like we always love standing behind other Polynesians because we know that we share like similar stories and backgrounds to them. So whenever we see like Polynesians on like the front stage, like we all want to support. And like she mentioned, when Ian won American Idol that night, I thought like we all won. Like I was so stoked. Like I felt proud like that he was Polynesian. So I think that's one awesome thing about like I guess that could be like an allyship thing too as well. Going back to the other question.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I think it was the day after my graduation, which they announced it, and my Samoan friend, she had like 20 family members come, and they rented this house, and they invited us all over for dinner, like some of our classmates and friends, and we went there, and we got there like right before they announced the awards, and her whole family was in the garage, and then like all these college students with like Hawaii connections or who are just like allies to Hawaii, some of our good friends, were all there, and like they announced it, and like you could hear everyone cheering, everyone felt like proud in that moment, like like we stood behind him and supported him, and it felt like that was a part of us winning as well. But I want to kind of move to that topic Mwani mentioned that he brought up a lot was the Priced Out of Paradise And something I like to bring up often as well, like the diaspora and how there's now more Native Hawaiians living in the diaspora than there are in Hawaii, and just Pacific Islanders in general. I mean, the Bay Area where I was going to school, where Mikaleva went for a little while, was so Pacific Islander heavy. Like you know where the communities are, you would see them each day in different jobs. But I just want to hear some of your thoughts on Priced Out of Paradise and that kind of concepts.
I definitely think it's sad that you mentioned there's like more Native Hawaiians, and probably this happens in other Polynesian cultures as well. But like in Hawaii, there's more Native Hawaiians living outside of Hawaii than there is on our islands. And as sad as it is, I know that I think it's our kuleana as the next generation coming up to make sure like we have things in place to keep our people here in Hawaii. Like our kuleana, at least for me, I plan to work on the in the ports, in the shipping industry, and there I could work my way through to get into the union. And like unions are really great in Hawaii. I think Hawaii is the most unionized state like in America, and that's for important reasons, because like keeping unions strong in Hawaii, we can make sure that the people are still getting compensated fairly for their jobs. They're not, all the profit isn't just going to the wallets of like people that aren't even living in Hawaii. So that's definitely one way I think we could fight to keep our people here in Hawaii.
I think it is sad that a lot of Hawaiians are being priced out of paradise, which is why, like you said, we should have things in place so that doesn't happen, like more affordable housing. And I've always had like this crazy idea where there's like, you know how Hawaiian homelands exist, that I think it should be the other way around. Instead of Hawaiians getting like being put on a list, a long list that you have to go from when you turn 18 to when you die. You might not even get pulled off that list, but they're given parcels of land. Like, I think, well, you guys can talk more about it, Momi, since you do live on Hawaiian homeland, but they're given like barren land. Like, you really can't, a lot of people can't really like live off of the land that they're given, these small parcels of land that are dedicated to Hawaiians. I think that it should be flipped, and that people, foreigners who come here, should be put on a list to get, housing or parcels of land, so to speak, instead of Hawaiians having to wait in line for like the land that they have rightful what's the word, stewardship to, and that it should be more accessible to Hawaiians to have land in Hawaii than foreigners coming and just being able to take over.
Kamali has shared that idea with me before, and I'm always like, yeah, like I support the idea. Obviously, I support the idea, and as a Kanaka who lives on Hawaiian homelands, and Moani also, we both grew up in Hawaiian homes. Like, you can see both sides of the situation. Like, if it weren't for our tutu passing away, Moani wouldn't have been able to live on Hawaiian homes. And if it wasn't for our aunties who passed away, we wouldn't have been able to live on Hawaiian homes. And that's just sad. And, my papa is still on the list, and bro still hasn't gotten it. But yeah, that's upsetting. But I support Kamali's idea. And one way that people are getting priced out of paradise and tying it into Hawaiian Homes is that Haole investors or Haole business people come to Hawaii looking for land. Hawaiian Home comes along, leases them land for the same amount that they would lease the land for a kanaka, which is $1 a year, and it's ag land. Let me just say it's ag land. So that means it's more than the regular housing 1 acre, 2 acre land parcel that you get. It's ag land that they can then profit off of and still only pay $1 off or $1 a year. And then Hawaiian Homes makes the freaking excuse that, oh, we don't have enough money to be building more houses. Yeah, because you're leasing land for $1 to foreigners. And that is an example. That's one example of the many of how we are being priced out of paradise. And I'm just saying it because now when people search my name up and they can say this podcast, it's on there. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. Come for me. I don't care. But that's just one way. Teach it, y'all. But like we gotta start bringing light to these situations and letting more people know. Get more Kanaka route out because I'm tired of seeing more Kanaka on the continent than in Hawaii where they belong. And then done.
I definitely agree that it is a really sad thing that Hawaiians are given kind of, I don't want to say the worst land because there shouldn't be any bad land in Hawaii, but they're given the most barren, the hardest to grow stuff on, the hardest to live off the land kind of places. But going off of Hawaiian Homes, I just saw in the news that they had just lost a lawsuit against like Native Hawaiians. I don't know if you guys saw that yet, but some Native Hawaiians whose family members like passed away on the list sued them and they just lost. So that's definitely something else we can. Now we have a few homework areas to watch the cultural parts in some of these Hollywood movies, and then also check out that Hawaiian. I was trying to read it, but it was a little bit confusing on what exactly like they sued them for. But it said that the Hawaiians won, but it sucks that it's the Department of Hawaiian Homelands who has to pay them out now, because that's just it's like fighting within your own system. Like that money should be coming from other areas like Red Hill or the government or the Navy poisoning the land and paying Hawaiians for that wreckage. But I don't know if anyone else wants to talk about kind of those aspects of things, of housing in Hawaii. Again, I bring up social media because that kind of newer account in the past year, Hawaii Housing, I can't remember their exact name, but they've been sharing stories and showing real people who live in Hawaii and trying to help combat the issues that islanders face living on their own islands. I know there's also a group on Kauai made up of realtors who started their own like nonprofit kind of thing to do that as well. But I don't know if you all want to continue that topic or if we can move on to our next kind of thing.
I guess kind of going off of like department, like DHHL, like the whole blood quantum thing too is also another problem that's like forcing our people to leave Hawaii, because that also creates division where we don't believe that we're Hawaiian enough based on blood quantum, which is like a holiday thing anyways. It's not even like if you're Hawaiian, you're Hawaiian. It doesn't matter how much like percentage you are. But in the minds of like Americans and DHHL, you have to be a certain amount to be able to even be put on the list. And like how Momi guys mentioned, like even though you're on the list, it doesn't matter. You might pass away on the list. You're not going to see any of that land that you're promised as being enough Hawaiian. So those are all problems too that needs to be straightened out as well. I mean, it's sad to see like our family and friends that they actually just got evicted out of their Hawaiian homelands because after their tutu passed away, nobody was enough Hawaiian to take over the lease of the land. So they lived on that plot of land for at least like 3 or 4 generations. Once I think it was like the third grandma, she received the land, and because nobody else was able to prove that they were Hawaiian enough, they took the land back, and now they're all living in like Arizona or Vegas or something like that. So it's just sad. Now all their kids have to be raised differently than what all of their family was raised up being in Waimanalo.
That's like also my issue. Like when I turned 18, I was like, I'm gonna go on the list. Like my mom is full Hawaiian. I'm gonna go on the list. I like bring my mo'okuauhau, I bring my genealogy, and they're like, nope, you're not Hawaiian enough. You're not 50%. And that's so then now we're kind of like having the hard like we're having to think like, okay, so like the house in Kekaha that I live in, that's like perfectly placed because it's right up the street from my grandma and right down the street from Momi. Like it's sad to think that our kids will still be enough Hawaiian to take over my Kekaha house, but then like if our kids don't have have kids with like people who are enough Hawaiian, then like they can't get the house, and that's just like sad to think because ever since we like started dating, we've been talking about like our kids going back to Kauai, like someone is gonna take over Momilani's house, maybe Momilani, but just having like growing up in the same neighborhood as my grandma and my cousins were just so it was just filled with so many memories. So just thinking that like our kids might not have the same memories are just really sad.
And one more thing to go off of that too, like I think we were talking about this in the beginning of like Hawaiian homelands, is that they kind of place us in like places that are like barren or like so far out of reach of like where the rest of like communities are. And that too, like you're sending all these Hawaiians to like this new place where there's not a lot of people. There's no connection to that place. Like all these Hawaiians aren't like lost now, even though like they're still in Hawaii. Like they have to kind of like set everything because I was talking about this earlier. Like I'm from Kapolei, and Kapolei is like mostly Hawaiian homes, which is awesome. But Kapolei is like a kind of newer city, and there's no like real mo'olelos or like connection to Kapolei. There's a few, but like basically everybody that's in Kapolei is not from Kapolei. Like there's no like I guess sense of belonging to Kapolei. Like all these people like had to be kind of displaced, put far away back when Kapolei was just like how bush, just like thrown into Kapolei. But I mean now it's better, but it took like what 20, 30 years when they first started making the Hawaiian homelands in Kapolei to be set up like this. So that's another problem too with Hawaiian homelands. But it's another topic.
Wait. Before we move on, kind of going off that, like how you're saying there's no really like generational connection in Kapolei. Like that's what we're kind of missing out on in the Hawaiian homelands thing. That's another like con of it, I guess, because we know of like Kuleana lands, and that is generational. That's like 7 generations, and they're still the same family still on the same piece of land. And kind of just bringing it up a little bit, we want Hawaii to be a lot more generationally, advanced, I guess, because we want more generations to stay on the same piece of land. Like I don't even know if I'm gonna keep that Hawaiian Homes house. I don't know if my brother or my sister will. And it's just it's something that bothers me to think about. But yes, we try to strive for generational, whatever the second word is. But yeah, kind of going off what you said about Kapolei.
Another thing too about generations is like there's that one weird gap where like our kupuna were shamed to be Hawaiian, especially kind of like during the annexation and all that, like that period of time where Hawaiian wasn't the norm. Like nobody wanted to be Hawaiian at that time, or there's a few, but for the most part, Hawaiians were shamed to be Hawaiian, and I feel like that set us back a long way, and I feel like our parents' generation, probably even our grandparents' generation, kind of restarted the whole like with the movement, with the Renaissance, the Hawaiian Renaissance, and things like that. But there's definitely that gap um, that like we will never recover from because there's so much like more missing things that we may never know, which is sad. But I guess I just kind of want to talk about the generational things as well. How they had that one gap during the annexation statehood stuff.
Yeah, I actually two things about both of that, about the generational gap and about Hawaiian homelands. So I just wanted to bring up that so this was like announced 5 days ago that it was a $328 million settlement for 2,800 Native Hawaiians, and this was filed 25 years ago. So it took 25 years for them to find like reconciliation because they said that Department of Hawaiian Homelands weren't giving out enough leases, and a judge found that to be true. And now they're being sued. So maybe something will change from that. Maybe that's what it takes. Maybe it takes to, drive in and push the system to fix the system. And then about the generational gap, it's actually something a little more like special that me and one of our classmates were in Costco the other day, and this auntie just stopped us out of nowhere. She just like turned and started talking to us, and we're like, oh yeah, hi, hi, hi. And then she's like, oh, what's your names? Like, where are you guys from? Like, she stopped us because I guess we looked like Hawaiian, and this was like an older Hawaiian auntie. And we talked to her for like 45 minutes. And kind of one of the last things she said was how proud she was for us to get our education and to um, be prideful in our culture, because she remembers when her family and growing up, like she didn't really want to be Hawaiian, but her grandma still told her that she had to, even if it wasn't the norm. And I think that it's just really important, and that's something people forget a lot about in today's time, because it's not talked about as much and not too many people know. And now that we're in like kind of another, I would say, a second wave of Renaissance, I think that it's something that is important. So I'm glad that you shared that, Mikaleva. But I think we're going to go with our final question, which is, how can we strengthen the Lahui with our field of studies, Lahui meaning community, with our field of studies, because we're all college students or college graduates. And yeah, if you guys want to share.
So I just graduated from nursing school, and kind of like going back into like the price out of paradise, like Nebraska is very cheap, like very, very cheap. Like I could probably get a like 3-bedroom house, and it's like maybe 300,000. Like it's very cheap. So thinking about like whether I was going to stay in Nebraska or come back was kind of a thought in me. Like when I went to Nebraska, I thought I would stay there for 2 years. And then slowly, as I started going into my clinicals, I realized like, why am I in Nebraska? I also worked in Iowa. Like, why am I basically giving back to this community that like didn't raise me? Like, it was just very interesting, like thought, because I was like helping the patients there, and it was great. I had a good experience, but I was just like, why would I stay here and continue in this community? So I decided to move back home to Hawaii to help the community here. Also, growing up on the west side of Kauai, I was just talking to a classmate about this too, but like the west side of Kauai and the west side of Oahu is pretty similar. And so I don't have a job yet, but all of the jobs that I've been looking at are kind of like on the west side, like maybe YNI Comp or Queens West Oahu, because it's like most similar to the community that I grew up in. So I would want to give back to the community, to the west side community. So I feel like these are some great Hawaiians down here.
As for me, I'm studying transportation management. So my emphasis is in maritime transportation. And I wanted to go into maritime just because obviously we live on an island. Um, so a lot of the things that we consume or use came by a ship, which is sad. And I've been going back and forth with that. Like, am I doing the right thing working in this industry? I have a few other friends that work in the maritime industry that are also Kanaka, and we talk about this a lot. Like, if we are doing the right thing. And we've come to the conclusion where I think it's good that we are working in this industry just because there isn't much Native Hawaiian voices in the shipping industry. Um, or like nobody really in the industry is trying to find a balance between self-sufficiency and still relying on like the ports for certain things. So I think that the reason why I wanted to go into it was to give that voice for our people. Definitely to try to find the balance, a healthy balance between like food security, all those types of things, as well as still working through the ports because the ports do support a lot of our people in Hawaii with jobs. It's a big industry. Um, so yeah, definitely that's my goal is to graduate, get on the ports, and start putting my native voice to work in that industry.
Okay, so my plan is to get into teaching and get my certificate. Yes, certificate. And also my degree in Hawaiian Studies or Pacific Studies. And in that way, I could become a teacher and teach the next generation. And also going to college and going to KCC on Kauai has made me think a lot more about how our population at KCC has like barely any Ni'ihau students or any of my Ni'ihau family or any public or charter schools students there at all. And part of me wants to just make a position for somehow to start the college counseling because right now the school that I also work at, Kekula Ni'ihau or Kekaha, they have counseling, like school counseling, like guidance counseling, but their main high school teacher does the guidance counseling. So not only does she teach math, English, science, social studies, she also teaches guidance counseling, and the ratio between the two are not equal, and they don't really prioritize the whole transition to college. So in a way, I know that I can probably scoop right on in there and become a guidance counselor if I really wanted to, because speaking with like counselors and advisors at KCC, they barely see any Ni'ihau family. And in that way, we can educate them and keep them in school rather than doing whatever they're doing right now. You know what I mean? And also like teaching the next gen. I've had amazing teachers and I've had such bad teachers, and those teachers can make or break your education and can make you either hate school or love school. And it was those teachers that helped me graduate high school, are helping me get through college. And in a way, I want to be that kind of person for the next gen and kind of just instill some of my own values in some kids that may not be mine, but you know what I mean? And in that way, I can like touch upon the next gen and help out our Lahui.
Also, Momi, I remember you mentioning, since we're on the topic of fields of study, that you're considering going into UH West Oahu's new program, their Hawaiian Health and Hawaiian Healing one. If you want to, I'm not really familiar with it, but if you want to talk about what they cover.
Oh yeah,
It's
so
right?
yeah. So Moani and I, actually, we talked about this. It's an online program, and you learn about La'au Lapa'au. You can either do it online or in person. And honestly, I would choose to do the in person, but I don't want to move here yet. Anyway, like you learn about like the plants, you learn about the different ceremonies. You get to meet people, Kanaka, who actually practice these practices in their everyday life, and you can learn how to incorporate it into your own life. And in that way, you have a degree behind La'au Lapa'au, and you have done it yourself. Like, you know how you can always get a degree in agriculture, but you're not actually going to get the actual degree unless you're in there working in agriculture. But through this degree, you can get the degree and experience, and you become a kahuna La'au Lapa'au, you know? And that's one thing that Monia is even considering, because she's a nurse. And in that way, she can learn, you know, ho'olauhui Hawaii and being a nurse. And I'm here for it. So yeah, that's the degree. You can always look into it on their website, but yeah.
Also, as for myself, in terms of fields of study in college, my first idea was to go to college on the continent, and to kind of gain like their knowledge or perspective, or learn how foreigners think, and to take that home to try and beat the system, so that I apply some of what I learned here in Hawaii and some of what I learned out there to our community here. I was set to go to Cal Poly SLO, in San Luis Obispo, and I was gonna do natural resource management and protection. But a week before I was supposed to leave, I had a family emergency, so I had to stay home. And I was gonna do that degree so that I could come back home and help out with protecting our land and making sure that we are better using it to be sustainable. So I ended up going to KCC. I registered on the first day of class, and I graduated last fall with my Associate of Arts in Hawaiian Studies. And now I am going to the University of Hawaii at West Oahu online, and I'm doing political science, which I think might be able to translate better into a field that I want to go in, which is eventually going to law school next year, and getting into environmental law, so I can support our community and make things right as best as I can, working against a system that's pitted against natives. And yeah.
Well, I just want to wrap up and say mahalo to all of you for joining me today and talking about all of these topics that we discussed. And a big mahalo again to Pacifica by Design, and an even bigger mahalo to California State Library to provide the funding so that we can have the platform to talk about these things. And with that, I think we're just going to say aloha and ahui ho. So